I'm Bill Lambert. I started in television about 1966. I worked part-time in radio, part-time in television. For those years from that till 1969, I worked part-time at OETA at 1801 North Ellison at KOKH Channel 25, back when it was a low-power station, ran camera on classwork. And I migrated from there to Channel 5, working part-time as a camera operator and then later as an engineer, because I was also a disc jockey and I knew something about working an audio board. I kind of wormed my way into that. When I graduated from college, I decided I was going to get out of that and become a salesman. I sold time for a short amount of time at KWCO in Chickasha, Oklahoma. Realized I couldn't sell a whole lot. So in order to provide for my wife and new child, I hunted around for work. I looked at several television stations, finally looked at Channel 4. I didn't know whether I was professional enough to come up to their stuff, but I tried it anyway, applied to Jay Spivey. Lo and behold, he liked what he saw. On my second visit for an interview, he said, I almost didn't make the interview just because I didn't look him in the eyes. So if I don't look you in the eye, I'm sorry. But I enjoyed starting out immediately working in television production, which was, in my case, working in Studio B doing news and Danny's Day, Foreman Scotty, that kind of stuff. It was pretty nice work. I worked 8 to 5. You'd get up in the morning and you'd go drink a cup of coffee, start figuring out what you were going to do for Danny's Day. You had a set piece you had to set up. We always had nice interviews, good people. Rodkey worked there. Bob Rodkey was the director, and at that time, and gee, he was so good at directing people, making sure that everything worked right. And you knew if he liked your work because he'd call you Ski Cat. That's back to his days at Korea, where he was a photojournalist, or photographer at least, in the military. Learned his chops there. I liked doing Danny's Day only because that gave us an opportunity. Every operator, every person in the production crew to, be creative. We'd come up with different set ideas, different lighting ideas. And I think that we learned more just by sheer number of different things we had to do. There were options brought up to you. You learned by doing. I had good teachers. I had my mentors. I had John Spivey and Jay Spivey, no relation, by the way. But John Spivey was the supervisor in Studio B. Jay Spivey was my boss, but he was also an excellent lighting man. One of the things you learn along the way is a good professional will not just be professional to himself, but he'll take you, if he thinks you can do the work, he'll teach you and say, Bill, you can do this if you do this and such. Well, I learned at the feet of some good people, and then took that and learned some more on my own. But I owe a lot to the people like John Spivey and Jay Spivey and Tom Carmichael and the others. Each day we had something different to do. I worked the weekend shift, and we would come in early in the morning, set up the scene, do the scenes all day long, tear it completely out, do the news at 6 o'clock, and by that time you would have the wrestling almost completely set up, and you'd tweak up the lighting, take a little break, and then do professional wrestling that night. And that was quite an experience. We'd go from rock and roll early in the morning all the way to professional wrestling in the evening, and then ended up doing the 10 o'clock news. That was fun. It was long and it was hard, but it was fun. Well, I worked with Danny Williams, both doing Danny's Day and professional wrestling, two great dichotomies within each other, but Danny Williams was ambidextrous and enough to where he could cover just about everything. He would announce professional wrestling with just as much verve and vinegar as with great passion, and then he would interview somebody with warmth and intelligence, and I always appreciated that in somebody. He could direct what was going on. You would see an ebb and flow of what he was doing by trying to get the best out of each individual. When he was doing wrestling, he would, say, "You're going to be mean and nasty, aren't you?" And the medic would say, and he'd start growling. But he would interview somebody like Anita Bryant, and he said, how wonderful a singer you are. And it was one of Oklahoma's bright stars, both singing and in the pageant world. Well, you see the great dichotomy of the two. But I saw a lot of music production went on a lot at Channel 4. For some reason or another, we started with furniture dealers. We did a lot of music production. It was odd because it started with furniture dealers. It seemed like if you owned a furniture store in Oklahoma City, you must have your own country western show. At one time, there was a country western show done for Jude and Jody Furniture. We did one for the Mathis brothers, and we also, when one of the furniture managers moved to a different place, I we did the Red Zillner show. We did a show that was sponsored by Big Red Furniture. Back then, that's Evans Furniture. They came up in class later on in their life. But they started out as Big Red 4x4 or 5x5. I never could remember that. It was fun doing those things because we got to meet a lot of talent, a lot of work, but there again, our creative juices were pushed to the limit. Doyle Glazier, the art director at Channel 4, would come up with wonderful sets. He and the entire art department and the carpentry department would come up with wonderful sets that we would have to set up and take down and light. But it was all worth it because it was enjoyable. We got to meet a lot of good people that way. But I think someplace, Jude and Jody, I know for a fact that Jude Northcutt, I think, has a copy of just about every show he ever did. And so if you get a chance, look to YouTube or someplace like that and see if you can't find something of that, because I think there's somewhere out there. Some of those shows like that we did migrated into, I would say more professionally done shows like the Buck Owens Ranch show, which we would all enjoy doing because there were people named people come from all over the United States. We got to meet not only the local music talent, we got to see talent come in on their great buses, pull up to the back of the station, and bring all their gear in. Well, we'd bring it in. They'd kind of watch us. They'd sit in the green room until we had everything set up, and then they'd do their songs and then leave. We had a wonderful time doing that. It was very long. Jim Weimer and I and some other folks would work way into the night sometimes, but that was all done kind of creatively. I think this was the first time that we did things like recorded a audio track using the cue track of the videotape, just because we wanted to get somewhat of a stereo effect. Before stereo came up, everything was mono back then. But we were allowed the luxury of being a little creative, and that's one of the things that I've always enjoyed about the work of Channel 4, because they would allow us the luxury of being creative. Television production was not only in the studio, it was also on remote. Television had never been, at Channel 4, an exclusively studio situation. We have always, or they had always, had some sort of mobile gear. That's one thing that Mr. Gaylord has always been able to come up with, and the money for it, at least. It was up to the folks like Willard Hines and Bob Hayward and all the rest of the people like Gene Lyons and the folks that Dale Bird that came up with the outfitting of these mobile units. He would buy a bus. The first time we had a mobile unit was a Buick powered bus that was empty, and they just filled it full of, at that time, black and white color equipment, which was quite bulky, but we had consoles for audio, consoles for video control, and storage areas for all the equipment. We had a television remote unit and a radio remote unit. At one time we had an FM station too, so that it was WKY AM and FM. I saw that bus, but I never worked in it. But I worked out of a small black and white bus until such time as they decided they could do more production, and they came out with a huge semi-trailer. Once again, it was empty, and it was the staff of folks like Bob Hayward and Gene Lyons and Dale Bird and Lester Tucker and Louis Parks that outfitted it custom and were the forerunners of mobile units around the United States. People would come and look and see how they laid out their equipment and get an idea of what a mobile unit was supposed to look like. Nowadays, you don't think much about it because they go do football any place, all around. Basketball, football, baseball. Well, we did them all. We did even hockey. Bob Sr. had a little meeting with us one time when the Oklahoma City Blazers were a brand new hockey team, and he said, we're going to teach you all the basics of hockey so that you'll understand enough to where you can shoot it. So we sat there and watched a hockey game, and he'd stop it every once in a while and say, this is what he's doing. There's the blue line over there. That blue line means something. So if you catch it in your viewfinder, this is how you're going to shoot it. If you see the referee doing something, you better note it. But so here was a mass of unknown folks with very little experience being taught by a sports director how to shoot a hockey game. We went out, shot it live, and everybody thought that was something. They thought that we really knew what we were doing. I think we did after a while. But we shot baseball with the 89ers. We shot OCU baseball. I don't know why we didn't shoot OU, but as much as we did. But we did shoot during the fledgling years of outfits like ESPN, Hughes Sports Network, Television Sports. All these companies would come to us because it was really easy to grab us, and they'd have a crew that was fairly experienced, directors that were experienced enough that they could take on the technical challenge of doing television sports in remote. And then all they had to do was before satellites, before all they'd have to do is hook up their video link it to a Class A telephone line, feed it to the telephone company, and they were in business. It was an amazing time because you divide your time between doing television sports of all kinds and television production of all kinds, using both the studio and the mobile unit. Bill Thrash, then program director, also had a sweet wife by the name of Billy Thrash, and she was associated with OCU at the time. And as a result, we had kind of an in for productions that way. We would use their, I believe they were called the Surrey Singers, one of their music groups, and we would make a Christmas show. Oh, we did that probably 5-6 years on remote using our production facilities, and Bill Thrash would be the director and executive producer of these programs. And it was quite a deal. We would have elaborate singing and dancing, not something you would think would come out of a small television station in Oklahoma City. But we got kind of known for doing productions like that. It was that kind of background that we built upon with the help of Lee Allen Smith, then general manager of the television station, to come up with what he called the Stars and Stripes show. The Stars and Stripes show was envisioned as a grand 4th of July show, and that it was. We spared no expense, and we wound up with a network television show broadcast live from various venues. The first time I think it was from the State Fairgrounds Arena, then to the Myriad, then someplace else. But each time it was bigger and bigger. We had class talent, class directors. We fed. I've never known a small television station from Oklahoma City. I was confounded because this television station was broadcasting live over NBC for an entire hour of patriotic music, singing, and dancing. We were in control of everything: the lighting, the television production, the engineering. And we were thought well enough to where it was nationwide. We had a director that came from Hollywood, Dick Schneider. And we wound up with Bob Hope being our host. Over the years, I never in my life thought I'd say this, but I've met the man and worked with the man, and I learned a lot about him. One of the things that, odd little things that he liked goat's milk cut with water. And you always had to have a glass of it someplace, you know. But that's one of the little things that you learn about people. You learn how nice people are, how easy they are to get along with if you do your job right. And that's all that can be expected of people. And you found out very quickly that these very good people are very good for a reason. They have talent. There was a lot of talent at Channel 4. There was a lot of talent in the engineering department to be able to come out and do a network quality program. People like Aaron Britton, who I loved dearly, who knew more about color in his little pinky than I would know in my entire life. There were folks who knew more about audio. Lester Tucker was a whiz at audio, and he was gracious enough to teach anyone what he was doing and why he was doing what he was doing. All along the way, Jay Spivey was lighting and running electricity and showing you how to do things so that later on in life you could do it too. Back in my early times at Channel 4, I was privileged to work with Steve Powell, who did a little show called Foreman Scotty, 4 o'clock every day, directed by one Billy Nix. The man was a wonderful director, but he was hard to work with because he told so many jokes, one right after another. It was hard to keep a straight face and do your job. I'll give you another secret. One of the commands that you had to have was for the magic lasso that would come out and survey the crowd of young people. And that was, the magic word was Nix-O-Billy. That was what we used to call Billy Nix, the director. So you're literally calling for the director to bring out this magic lasso. A piece of trivia. When I was 13 years old, I visited Channel 4. And because it was my birthday, even as I was a large person, I sat on Woody. Got the golden horseshoe. Got it to this day. So there. Later on, I got to run camera on production of Foreman Scotty's Adventures. Now this man, Steve Powell, was a wonderful writer, creative mind, and he would come out, every 2 weeks or so with a raft of legal-sized paper, mimeographed off or typed off, copies, and they would be sketches of what his idea of an adventure would be. Now, he'd write this himself. They were just sketches, but we'd gather around and he'd say, we're going to have an adventure doing this and such. And everybody'd kind of ponder on what it was that they were going to be doing. Well, it's where he's going out to sea, and so we'd have to go, well, we have to come up with some sort of a sea view or a ship or something. We'd root around in the warehouse trying to find something that would make it look like it was a ship or a mine or an airplane or a submarine. Believe me, he came up with a lot of weird stuff. But there was, once again, our possibility of being creative. We did the same thing for Count Gregor, but that's another story. But periodically, he'd need a little extra talent. And wouldn't you know, it'd befall me. Every year, we would have our grand entrance into the airwaves for the state fair. We'd roll up the mobile unit, the radio mobile unit, the television mobile unit, and around the old Pubco Pavilion, and have a grand view of what this dynasty has brought. Television and radio and publishing. We would do the newscast, noon news, 6 and 10, and then in between we do Denny's Day, and lo and behold, we do Foreman Scotty too. It fell on me one day that they decided they needed a villain to ride around and shoot at Foreman Scotty. They didn't have fancy names. I was simply called the Phantom. They said, Bill, put on Count Gregor's cape, wear cowboy boots, I'll give you a hat, put on the shirt that we got out of the costume room, and you're now the Phantom. I'll give you a gun. So it was my job to go over to the monorail, hide out, get on the monorail. They'd have it timed where Foreman Scotty was ready to do something, and he'd look up at the monorail as it goes by, and it'd reveal me, looking sinister. Well, the only problem is we didn't think it through real quick, and we found out very quickly that the windows opened on the wrong side. The other side that was facing Opubco, where all the cameras were trained, were fixed windows. They wouldn't open. So I, being the desperate soul trying to please everyone and not pleasing many, decided in my infinite wisdom to crawl on top of the monorail through the window, lean over the monorail, and shoot at Foreman Scotty as he passed by. That became a series every fair. Every time there was a fair, mysteriously the Phantom would appear. I have been chased by over 200 little kids and barely got out with my life. It was an amazing time. We mentioned a little earlier about our foray into the macabre with, once again, Count Gregor. The Count, John Ferguson, has gone through many morphs. He was first and foremost a great salesman. And that's his prime interest, was being a salesman of television and radio time. And in his spare time, he'd always had the love of acting. So he developed over the period of time a macabre character called Count Gregor. I was able to work with him for many years as both cameraman and lighting designer, and that was a ball. He had other friends would come in and out during the occasions. He had a ambulance driver, or there's a better term for it, but he was from Enid, Oklahoma, an EMT guy who came in and put on an ape mask, gloves, and a leather jacket, and he was the ape man. And there were others, but we all worked off of an amazing creative mind, once again, of John Ferguson, Count Gregor. And we tried to sink in with our horror movie of the week. We would try as possible to be as creative as possible and do inserts that would run in between the movies, the movie sections actually, segments. And he would introduce the movie, we'd go into the movie, we'd do a little segment, funny bit, go back into commercial break, go back into the movie, ad infinitum. He had a show every week for years. And so we got to do a lot of stuff. One of the best times we ever had was Channel 4, once again being creative, and allowed us to be creative, ran a 3D movie. Now think about that. Channel 4 did 3D television before anybody. And what happened was our engineering staff got together and said they were creative enough to figure out how to do television in 3D by moving the scans, the overlay of the three tubes slightly off enough that you could get a 3D effect. And it kind of mushroomed into such an extent that our sales department thought this was going to be a great gimmick. And so we got 7-Eleven to come in on the deal, sponsor it, and we got them 3D glasses. And 7-Eleven dispensed them as part of the promotion, cross promotion. And we televised the movie called, I think it was called The Ape Man. I could be wrong about that. But it was a really bad 3D movie, but it didn't matter because we ran it all in 3D and the inserts were all in 3D. That says something for the creativity of Channel 4. I worked as a projectionist for Channel 4 in the 70s, And that was during a period of time when Channel 4 was just on top of its game as far as it was concerned with special projects, award-winning special reports. We had people like Bob Dotson and Charlie Hoff, Lynn Sassenrath, folks that were superb journalists. They had been garnered by both Ernie Schultz and then later on by Jack Ogle. And we always had a superb journalistic crew. They were lean and mean. We didn't have a whole lot of reporters, but those we had were sharp, knew their business. And it was my job as a projectionist to help put together all these special reports. After a few years of doing this, they decided I was good enough to get the really important work. I don't know why, but they did. And so I laid film to tape for editing on the only documentary made by Channel 4 to receive a National Emmy Award. A show called Through the Looking Glass Darkly. And I had also the misfortune of damaging the first foot of film. It seems as though the editor, in his infinite wisdom, decided that he would put so much Vitafilm on, which is a solvent, a cleaner solvent, that it literally slid through the gates of the projector and chewed up the first foot of film. I stopped it immediately, and they go, "What happened?" And I said, "This film is damaged," and everything got real quiet. It was the first 2 feet of film, an interview with a fellow by the name of Jimmy Stewart. I will never forget it. Jimmy Stewart was a legend in the civil rights industry in the city of Oklahoma City. He had just passed away. So now you know why there was a hush. Johnny Shannon, thankfully, was able to replace the sprockets in that film, and I very carefully laid it to tape. I spent the better part of 43 years at Channel 4. Been through 6 companies, 3 call letter changes, and I've never met a better group of people that I've met at Channel 4. I spent years running camera, running projection, master control, lighting designer, lighting director, camera operator, and now I'm retired. but I will always remember the people. All through the years that have been my friends and mentors at WKY Television.